The rain came down hard that Tuesday morning in Chicago. The kind that doesn't just fall but slants sideways, soaking everything it touches. People hurried along the sidewalks with their collars turned up and umbrellas fighting the wind. Cars hissed through puddles, and the whole city seemed wrapped in a gray, wet blanket. Inside the gleaming glass lobby of one of the tallest buildings downtown, none of that mattered much. The air was warm, dry, and smelled faintly of expensive coffee and polished marble. A man stood near the revolving doors, checking his watch for the third time in 2 minutes. He wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and his shoes shone like they'd never seen a rainy sidewalk. His name wasn't important, not to the story, not yet, but everyone who worked in that building knew him. He was the CEO, the boss, the man who signed the checks, made the big calls, and rarely, if ever, lingered in the lobby like this. He was waiting for his car, which was running 5 minutes late. A minor inconvenience that already had his jaw tight. In his mind, he was already halfway through his day. A 9:15 strategy meeting, a call with investors in Tokyo, then lunch with a potential partner whose name he'd already forgotten. His life moved in straight lines, efficient, controlled, predictable. Emotions were distractions. Kindness was a luxury he hadn't afforded himself in years. Just as he pulled out his phone to text his driver, something small and quick brushed against his leg. He barely noticed it at first, maybe a gust of wind, maybe a stray shopping bag. But then a voice, soft and trembling, cut through the hum of the lobby. "Excuse me, sir?" He turned, expecting a lost tourist or a delivery person. Instead, he saw a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9. Her dark hair was damp from the rain, tucked under a red hood that was too big for her. She wore a puffy coat that hung past her knees, and her sneakers were splattered with mud. In her hands, she clutched a notebook, worn at the edges, its cover stained with what looked like coffee or maybe tea. She looked up at him with eyes so wide and serious they seemed too heavy for her face. "Can you read this for me?" she asked. "It's important." He blinked. Not the usual request. He glanced around, expecting to see a parent nearby, a teacher, someone responsible. But the lobby was full of suits rushing to elevators, not a single adult paying attention to the girl. "I'm sorry," he said, already stepping back slightly. "I don't have time." But she didn't move. Instead, she held the notebook out toward him like it was something sacred. "Please," she whispered. "My mom wrote it. She said if I ever got really scared, I should find someone kind and ask them to read it." That word, kind, landed strangely in his chest. He hadn't been called kind in a long time. Hadn't tried to be either. "I'm not the right person," he said, softer this time. "You look like you read a lot," she said, glancing at the leather briefcase in his hand. "And you have nice eyes." He almost laughed. Nice eyes. No one had ever said that to him. He opened his mouth to refuse again, but something in her expression stopped him. It wasn't just fear, it was hope. Like she truly believed he could help. Before he could think better of it, he reached out and took the notebook. The moment his fingers touched the cover, she let go like she'd been holding her breath. "Thank you," she said quickly. Then without another word, she turned and walked toward the exit. "Wait," he called after her. "What's your name? Where are you going?" But she didn't look back. She pushed through the heavy glass doors and vanished into the rain, her small figure swallowed by the crowd on the street. He stood there, stunned, the notebook warm in his hands. It felt lighter than it looked, but somehow full of weight. He glanced around again, still no adult searching for her. Was she alone? Was this some kind of trick? His mind raced through possibilities: scam, social experiment, lost child. But the notebook felt real. Too real. His driver finally pulled up, horn giving a polite beep. The CEO hesitated, then tucked the notebook under his arm and stepped into the car. "Headquarters," he told the driver, though that's where they already were. He just needed a moment to think. As the car pulled away from the curb, he stared out the window at the blur of wet streets and passing faces. Who was that girl? And why had she chosen him, of all people, to read her mother's words? Back in his office on the 42nd floor, the city stretched out below like a living map. He set the notebook on his desk next to his laptop and a half-empty bottle of imported water. He told himself he'd just glance at the first page, just enough to see if it was safe if the girl needed help. Then he'd call building security, maybe even the police. He opened it. The handwriting was neat but hurried, like someone writing against time. The first page wasn't dated like a journal. Instead, it began with a sentence that made his breath catch. "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone. And my daughter is scared. Please be gentle with her," and with these words. He sat back in his chair. Below that, the real entry began. "Today, the doctor said I have 6 months. Maybe less." They used words like aggressive and rare and "we'll do what we can." But I know what it means. I've seen it before in my aunt, in the woman who lived downstairs. It means I won't see Maya graduate. Won't be there when she falls in love. Won't get to braid her hair on her wedding day, but I can't fall apart. Not yet. Because Maya still needs me to be strong, even if I'm only strong in memories now. So I'm writing this. For her. For whoever finds her when I'm not there to hold her hand. Tell her I loved every single day with her. Even the messy ones. Especially the messy ones. The CEO read it twice, then a third time. His throat felt tight. He hadn't cried in years. Not since his own father's funeral, and even then he'd excused himself to the restroom to compose himself before anyone saw. But now, sitting in his quiet, perfect office with the skyline at his back, he felt something shift inside him, like a door he didn't know was locked had just creaked open. He flipped to the next page. Maya hates broccoli but will eat it if you call it dinosaur trees. She's scared of thunder but pretends she's not. Her favorite book is The Velveteen Rabbit. Read it to her when she can't sleep. And if she asks why I left, tell her I didn't. I'm just in a different kind of quiet now, in the smell of rain, in the pages of her books, in the way she hums when she's drawing. I'm still there. He closed the notebook slowly. Outside, the rain had eased. A patch of sunlight broke through the clouds, glinting off the windows of nearby buildings. He thought about the girl, her red hood, her muddy shoes, the way she'd looked at him like he might actually be good. Who was her mother? Where was she now? He picked up his phone, not to call his assistant or his lawyer, but to do something he hadn't done in a long time. Ask for help. "Get me everything you can find on a woman named Elena Martinez," he told his head of security. She had a daughter around 8 years old. Likely lived in the city. Check hospitals, obituaries, school records, and be discreet. He hung up and stared at the notebook again. It wasn't just paper and ink. It was a plea. A love letter. A final act of a mother trying to protect her child from the world's sharpest edges. And somehow, impossibly, it had landed in his hands. He didn't know it yet. But his life, so carefully built on control, ambition and distance, was about to unravel. Not in a dramatic crash, but in quiet moments. A shared cup of hot chocolate, a bedtime story read aloud, a little girl asking, "Do you think she's watching us?" But that was still ahead. For now, he just sat there, the rain-streaked city below him, the diary open on his desk, and for the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't name. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't pity. It was the beginning of something like grace. He didn't sleep that night, not really. He tossed in his king-sized bed, the city lights painting faint stripes across the ceiling, the diary resting on his nightstand like a silent guest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, the little girl in the red hood standing alone in the rain, handing him something more precious than she probably even knew. And her mother's words kept echoing in his head, "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone." By 3 a.m., he gave up. He sat at his kitchen counter in sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt, clothes he hadn't worn outside the house in years, and opened the diary again. This time he read it slowly, page by page, as if each sentence were a message meant only for him. The entries weren't fancy. No big speeches or dramatic confessions, just the quiet, everyday truth of a woman trying to hold on while letting go. Maya lost her first tooth today. She cried because she thought it meant she was growing up too fast. I told her it just means she's getting stronger. I kept the tooth in an old mint tin on my dresser. If you find it, please give it to her. She'll want to keep it. She asked me today if heaven has libraries. I said yes, bigger than any on earth, and all the books are brand new and you never have to return them. She smiled. I hope that's true. I can't lift her anymore. Not without pain. So tonight, when she wanted a piggyback ride, I had to say no. She didn't argue. Just nodded and went to her room. I cried in the kitchen. She's learning to protect me now. My baby is protecting me. Each line cut deeper than the last. He'd built a life on logic, on numbers that added up, on deals that made sense. But this was something else entirely. This was love that didn't ask for anything in return. Love that kept giving even when the body was failing. He thought about his own childhood, cold dinners, a father who measured worth in report cards and bank balances, a mother who disappeared into herself after the divorce. He'd spent his whole life trying to prove he was enough by becoming more successful, more powerful, more untouchable. But reading these pages, he realized something painful. He'd never once been loved like this. Unconditionally, messily, fully. And now somehow he was being trusted with it. The next morning, he skipped his usual 6 a.m. workout and instead called his head of security again. "Anything yet?" "Working on it," came the reply. "There's the Elena Martinez listed at St. Vincent's Hospital, terminal oncology. Passed away 3 days ago. Left behind a daughter, age 8. No father listed. Extended family out of state, slow to respond. Child's in temporary foster care through the county." The words hit him like a punch. 3 days ago. She'd died just days before her daughter handed him the diary. That meant the girl had been alone, with no mother, no real home, when she approached him. He sat very still. "Get me the address of the foster placement," he said, voice low, "and find out everything you can about Elena, her job, her friends, her routines. I need to understand who she was." By noon, a thick file sat on his desk. Elena had worked part-time at the public library downtown, children's section. She'd lived in a small apartment on the south side, paid her rent on time, volunteered at her daughter's school when she could. No debts, no drama. Just a quiet life built around one small person. He read through the notes, then pulled up the library's website, scrolled to staff photos. There she was, Elena. Smiling softly, dark hair pulled back, wearing a cardigan that looked like it had been mended at the elbow. Her eyes were kind. Tired, but kind. The kind of eyes that had seen hard things but still chose to look at the world with warmth. He stared at her photo for a long time. That afternoon, instead of heading to a board meeting, he told his assistant he was handling a personal matter and drove himself, something he almost never did, to the public library. He parked a block away, walked in like any other visitor, and stood near the children's section pretending to browse picture books. An older woman with silver hair and a name tag that read Linda approached. "Can I help you find something?" He hesitated. "I'm looking for information about Elena Martinez." The woman's face softened instantly. "Oh, you knew her?" "Not personally," he admitted. "But her daughter, I met her briefly." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "Poor sweet Maya. Elena was the best of us. Always had a book ready for a crying kid. Always stayed late to help with homework. When she got sick, she still came in when she could, just to read story hour. Said it kept her connected to Maya's world." He swallowed. "What was she like?" "Brave," Linda said without pause. "Not loud brave, quiet brave. The kind who shows up even when it hurts. She used to say, 'Love isn't a feeling. It's what you do when you're tired, scared, or broken.'" He nodded, throat tight. "Did she talk about what she wanted for Maya?" he asked. "All the time," Linda said. "She worried about who'd take care of her. Not just food and school, those things, but the little things. Who'd... Remember Maya hates the crusts cut off her sandwiches? Who'd know she sleeps with 3 stuffed animals and sings to them when she's nervous?" He thought of the diary entry. "Tell her I'm in the smell of rain, in the pages of her books. I think she left something for her," he said carefully. "A diary, full of instructions, memories." Linda's eyes widened. "She mentioned that, said she was writing down everything so Maya wouldn't forget her voice. Oh, honey, if you have that, it's the most precious thing in the world to that child." He left the library with a lump in his chest and a new certainty. He couldn't just hand the diary back to social services and walk away. That wasn't what Elena would have wanted. That wasn't what he could live with now. Back in his Office. He reread the diary one more time, this time noticing the small details he'd missed before. Maya's birthday is October 12th. She likes chocolate cake with strawberry frosting, not the other way around. And she always makes a wish for someone else, not herself. Last year, she wished her teacher's sick cat would get better. If she gets a fever, don't give her medicine right away. Rub her back and sing that silly song about the dancing potatoes. It calms her down more than anything. She's shy at first, but once she trusts you, she'll tell you everything. She'll show you her drawings, her rock collection, the secret hiding spot under her bed where she keeps her treasures. Please don't laugh at them. They matter to her. He closed the book and leaned back, staring out at the skyline. For the first time, his view didn't feel like a reward. It felt like a cage. All this power, all this money. And what had it given him? A lonely penthouse. A strained relationship with his own grown daughter, whom he hadn't spoken to in over a year after a stupid argument about priorities. He'd chosen work over people so many times he'd forgotten how to be human. But Elena, she'd had almost nothing, and yet she'd given everything. That night he did something he hadn't done in decades. He called his daughter. Her voice was cautious when she answered. "Dad?" "Hey," he said, voice rough. I was thinking about you." A pause. "Are you okay?" "I'm trying to be," he said. "I read something today that made me realize I've been missing what matters." She didn't say much. Old wounds don't heal in one call, but she didn't hang up either. And when he said, "I'm sorry," she whispered, "Me too." It wasn't fixed, but it was a start. The next morning he made a decision. He wouldn't just find Maya, he'd meet her, not as a CEO, not as a stranger with money, but as someone who'd read her mother's heart and felt its weight. He contacted the foster care agency, not with demands, but with a simple request. "I have something that belongs to Maya. Her mother's diary. I'd like to return it to her in person, if that's allowed." After background checks and calls with social workers, they agreed. He could visit, supervised at the foster home for 1 hour. He spent the night before pacing his apartment, rehearsing what to say. Should he explain how he got the diary? Should he read a passage to her? Should he promise to help? In the end, he decided on honesty. Just that. The foster home was nothing like his world. A modest brick house with a small yard, a tire swing hanging from an old oak tree and flower boxes on the windows. A kind-faced woman answered the door and led him to the living room, where Maya sat on the couch, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the floor. She looked up when he entered. Her eyes widened. "You came back," she said softly. "I did," he said, sitting in the armchair across from her, careful not to crowd her. "I read the whole diary," she nodded, twisting the hem of her sweater. "Did she say nice things about me?" "Every single page," he said. "She called you her bravest person." Maya's chin trembled. "She didn't want to leave." "No," he said. "She didn't, but she wanted you to know she's still with you, in all the little things." He reached into his coat and pulled out the diary. He'd wrapped it in clean paper, tied with a simple ribbon, something Elena might have done. Maya took it like it was made of glass. She opened it to a random page and read silently. Then she looked up, tears spilling over. She wrote about the dancing potatoes, she whispered. He smiled faintly. "She did. Do you know the song?" He shook his head. "But I'd like to learn it." Maya wiped her eyes, then took a deep breath. And softly, shyly, she began to sing. A silly, off-key tune about potatoes wearing tiny hats and tap dancing in the rain. He listened, eyes stinging, heart full in a way he didn't know was possible. When she finished, she looked at him and asked the question he'd been dreading. "Why did you read it? Why did you come back?" He didn't give her a polished answer. No corporate speak. Just truth. "Because your mom's words reminded me that I forgot how to care," he said. "And maybe I needed to remember." Maya studied him for a long moment. Then quietly she said, You have nice eyes. Just like I thought. And in that moment, something inside him cracked open, not to break, but to let the light in. The visit ended too soon. Just as Maya was starting to relax, her shoulders dropping, her voice growing steadier, the foster mom gently said it was time. The social worker, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, nodded. 1 hour was up. He stood slowly, not wanting to startle her. Maya clutched the diary to her chest like a shield. "Will you come back?" she asked, voice small. He didn't promise what he couldn't keep. "I'd like to," he said. "If it's okay with you, and with them." He nodded toward the adults. Maya looked down, then back up. "Okay." That single word stayed with him all the way back to his car, all the way through the quiet drive home, all through the long evening where he sat at his kitchen table with a cup of tea he didn't drink. He kept replaying her face, the way her eyes lit up when she sang that silly song, the way she'd trusted him enough to ask if her mom said nice things. He hadn't planned on getting involved. He'd only meant to return the diary, maybe make a donation to the foster agency and go back to his life. But something had shifted. Not just in him, in the space between them. There was a thread now, thin but real, connecting a grieving child and a man who'd forgotten how to feel. Over the next few days, he didn't call his lawyers. He didn't schedule meetings. Instead, he called the social worker, not to demand, not to use his name or influence, but to ask questions. What does Maya need right now? Stability, came the answer. Routine. Someone consistent. Her aunt is considering taking her in, but she lives 3 states away and has health issues of her own. It's uncertain. He listened. Really listened. Then he asked, what if someone local wanted to help? Not adopt, just be there? There was a pause. Foster care is complicated. But supervised visits? Mentoring? That's possible, if you're serious. I am, he said. And just like that, he started showing up. Not with gifts or grand gestures. The first time, he brought 2 paper cups of hot chocolate from the cafe near the library. Elena's favorite spot, according to Linda. He sat with Maya on the porch swing at the foster house while she sipped hers, blowing on it carefully. They didn't talk much, just watched squirrels chase each other across the yard. The second time, he brought a blank notebook. Your mom wrote in one, he said. Maybe you could write in this one too. About your day, or your dreams, or the dancing potatoes. Maya smiled, a real one this time, and took it. Slowly, visit by visit, trust grew. She started asking him questions. Do you have kids? Yes, he said. A daughter. We haven't talked much lately, but we're trying. Do you miss her? Every day, he admitted. She nodded like she understood. One afternoon, as they walked around the block, she asked the question he'd been dreading. Do you think my mom watches me? He stopped walking. Looked down at her. I don't know how heaven works, he said honestly. But I do know your mom loved you more than anything. And love like that, it doesn't just disappear. I think she's in the things that made her happy. Books, rain, your laugh. So yeah, in a way she's always watching. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she reached for his hand. He froze. No one had reached for his hand in years. Not like this, not with simple, unguarded need. He swallowed hard and gently wrapped his fingers around hers. Her hand was small and warm, and it fit in his like it belonged there. They walked the rest of the block like that. Back at the house, the foster mom gave him a knowing look. She hasn't held anyone's hand since her mom got too sick to walk, she said softly. He didn't know what to say to that. So he just nodded, heart pounding. As weeks passed, he began to see the world through Maya's eyes. He noticed things he'd never paid attention to before. The way sunlight hit the leaves in the park, the sound of kids laughing at the playground, the smell of fresh bread from the corner bakery. He started reading children's books again, just to be ready when she asked. He even practiced the dancing potato song in the shower, though he'd never admit it. One Saturday, he took her to the library. Not as a CEO, not as a donor, but as a visitor. Maya ran straight to the children's section, her face lighting up like she'd come home. She showed him her favorite shelf, the reading nook where her mom used to sit during story hour, the little table where they'd done homework together. She'd sit right there, Maya said, pointing to a worn armchair. and I'd sit on the floor with my back against her legs. She'd read and sometimes she'd fall asleep, but I never moved. I liked feeling her breathe. He stood there, throat tight, imagining it. Elena, tired from treatment, still showing up for her daughter in the quietest, most loving way. Linda, the librarian, saw them and came over. "Well, look who's back," she said warmly, ruffling Maya's hair. Then she turned to him. "You're doing a good thing." "I'm just returning what was given to me," he said. Linda smiled. "Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do." Later, as they walked back to the car, Maya asked, "Do you think my mom would have liked you?" He thought about it. "I don't know," he said, "but I hope I'm becoming the kind of person she'd trust with you." Maya considered that. Then she said, she liked people who listened. "I'm trying to," he said. "You're doing okay," she said, and it felt like the highest praise he'd ever received. Meanwhile, his real life, the boardrooms, the calls, the pressure started to feel distant, almost unreal. He still went to work, still made decisions, but something had changed in how he saw it all. He began asking different questions in meetings. How does this affect real people? Are we helping or just profiting? His team noticed. Some were confused. Others were relieved. One evening, after a long day, he sat alone in his office, staring at the city lights. His phone buzzed. It was his daughter. "Hey," she said when he answered. "I heard you've been different. Is that a bad thing?" "No," she said softly. "It's a good thing. Mom told me you called her last week, just to check in. I should have done it years ago. Better late than never," she said. Then, after a pause, "Do you want to have dinner sometime?" "Just us?" "Yes," he said, voice thick. "I'd like that very much." That night he dreamed of Elena, not as a stranger but as a quiet presence standing in a sunlit library, smiling as Maya ran into her arms. When he woke, he felt peace, not guilt. Then came the call that changed everything. The social worker's voice was gentle but firm. "The aunt has decided she can't take Maya. Health reasons. We're looking for a long-term placement. Kinship isn't working out." His heart dropped. What happens now? Foster care, possibly adoption. But it takes time. And the right match. He didn't hesitate. What if I wanted to be considered? There was a long silence. You'd have to go through the full process. Home study, background checks, training. It's not fast. And it's not guaranteed. "I understand," he said. "But I want to try." He didn't do it for praise. He didn't do it to fix his past. He did it because one rainy morning, a little girl with a red hood had looked at him and seen someone who could care, and he didn't want to prove her wrong. The process was humbling. He filled out forms about his childhood, his finances, his relationships. He let strangers walk through his penthouse and ask if it was child-friendly. It wasn't. He attended parenting classes with people half his age, listening more than he spoke. He answered hard questions. Why do you want to do this? What if it's hard? What if she never calls you Dad? "I don't need a title," he told the caseworker. "I just want to be there for her, to make sure she never doubts she's loved." At home, he started making changes. He moved out of the penthouse, too cold, too empty, and rented a townhouse in a quiet neighborhood with a backyard and a big window seat perfect for reading. He bought a second-hand bookshelf and filled it with children's books. He even planted flowers in the front yard, marigolds, because Maya said her mom loved their bright color. When Maya came for her next visit, she stood in the doorway, eyes wide. "You live here now?" "For now," he said. "If you like it." She walked through the room slowly, touching things. A soft blanket on the couch, a framed photo of the library, a small stuffed rabbit on the guest bed. "This is for you," he said, pointing to the rabbit. "Your mom wrote that you sleep with 3. I only got 1 so far." Maya hugged it tight. "Her name is Button," she whispered. "Then Button it is." She looked around again, then at him. "It feels like a home." He smiled. "That's the idea." Later, as they sat on the porch eating peanut butter sandwiches, crusts on, Maya insisted. She asked, "Are you going to be my foster dad?" "I'd like to," he said. "If the court says yes, and if you're okay with it." She was quiet for a long time, swinging her legs. Then she said, "My mom said the right people show up even when it's hard." "She was smart," he said. Maya nodded. "She'd say you're the right person." He didn't cry, not then. But that night after she'd gone back to her foster home, he sat on the new porch in the dark, staring at the stars, and whispered, "Thank you, Elena." He didn't know if she could hear him, but he hoped somewhere she knew her love hadn't been lost. It had found its way, through rain, through pages, through a little girl's brave request, into hands that would finally hold it gently, and that was enough. The day the court approved the foster placement, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a beginning. There were no cameras, no speeches, just a quiet meeting in a small room with a judge, a social worker, and Maya sitting between them, her fingers laced tightly in her lap. When the judge said, "It's official," Maya didn't jump up or cheer. She just turned to him, eyes searching his face, and whispered, "So, you're really going to stay?" He nodded. "As long as you'll have me." She leaned her head against his shoulder then, just for a second, and that small gesture meant more than any contract ever could. Moving in was simple. Maya arrived with 2 suitcases, a backpack full of school supplies, and Button the rabbit tucked under her arm. She stood in the doorway of her new room, the one with the bookshelf, the soft rug, and the window that caught the morning sun, and took it all in. "It's perfect," she said. He hadn't redecorated with fancy furniture or bright colors. He'd asked her what she liked, and she'd said, "Just quiet, and books." So that's what he gave her. The first few nights were quiet, too. She'd come downstairs after bedtime to make sure he was still there. Sitting in the living room with a book or grading papers from her school, he'd started volunteering as a reading helper. Each time he'd look up and say, "Still here?" And she'd nod and go back upstairs, a little more at ease. He didn't push, didn't try to be dad right away. He just showed up, made breakfast, walked her to the bus stop, listened when she talked about her day, stayed silent when she didn't. He learned her rhythms, how she liked her toast slightly burnt, how she hummed when she was nervous, how she always checked under her bed before turning off the light. Not because she was scared of monsters, but because she liked to make sure her treasures were safe. One evening, as they washed dishes side by side, her on a step stool, him rinsing, he asked, "What do you miss most about your mom?" She didn't answer right away, just scrubbed a plate slowly. Then she said, her voice, "When she read to me, it was soft like a blanket." He thought about that. The next night he sat on the edge of her bed with The Velveteen Rabbit in hand, the book Elena had mentioned in the diary. He wasn't a natural reader. His voice was deep, a little stiff from years of boardroom speeches. But he tried. He slowed down, added voices for the toys, stumbled over words, laughed at himself. Maya watched him the whole time. When he finished, she said, "You're getting better." "Practice," he said. "Keep practicing," she said, and pulled the covers up to her chin. At work, things were changing too, but not in the way anyone expected. He'd always run his company like a machine, efficient, fast, results-driven. But now he started noticing the people behind the numbers. The single mother in accounting who left early twice a week for her son's therapy, the young intern who looked exhausted because he was working 2 jobs, the team in customer service who handled angry calls all day with no recognition. One morning, instead of reviewing profit margins, he called a different kind of meeting. "I've been thinking," he said, standing in front of his leadership team. "We talk a lot about growth. But what if real growth isn't just about revenue? It's about how we treat the people who make this company run." Silence, then murmurs. He didn't wait for approval. He announced a new policy. Flexible hours for caregivers, paid mental health days, a fund to help employees with emergency childcare. He redirected part of his own bonus to start a program that partnered with local schools, providing books, tech, and mentorship for kids like Maya. Some board members pushed back. "It's not our job to fix society," one said. "Maybe not," he replied. "But it's our chance to be part of something that matters." To his surprise, many employees responded with quiet gratitude. Emails poured in, not about raises or promotions, but about how the changes let them be better parents, better humans. One woman wrote, "Because of the new schedule, I got to see my daughter's first soccer goal. Thank you." He printed that email and taped it to his office wall. He also started visiting his daughter again. Not just dinners, but walks, coffee, even helping her move into a new apartment. They didn't fix everything overnight, There were awkward silences, old hurts that still stung. But they were trying. And that, he realized, was the whole point. Back at home, life settled into a new kind of rhythm. Maya started leaving drawings on his desk, stick figure versions of them reading together, or walking the dog they'd adopted from the shelter, a scruffy terrier mix they named Paige after books. She'd started calling him Hey instead of Sir, and sometimes when she was excited, she'd grab his hand without thinking. One Saturday, they went to the library. Maya ran to the children's section like always, but this time, she didn't just browse. She picked out books for him too. "You should read this," she said, handing him a novel about a man who rebuilds his life after loss. "It's good," he smiled. "Since when do you pick books for grown-ups?" "Since I figured out you like sad stories with happy endings," she said, completely serious. He bought the book. Read it that night. Cried a little. Then came the company town hall, the first big test of his new direction. Hundreds of employees filled the auditorium. Cameras rolled. Investors watched from the back. Everyone expected the usual. Polished slides, confident projections, a speech about winning. Instead, he walked on stage without notes. "I want to tell you a story," he began. He didn't use names. Didn't mention Maya directly, but he told them about a rainy morning, a worn notebook, and a mother's love that refused to end. He spoke about how one small act of trust, a child asking a stranger to read something important, had cracked open a life that had grown too hard. "I used to think success was about control," he said, voice steady but warm, "about never showing weakness. But real strength isn't in never falling, it's in letting someone help you up, and in helping others when they fall." He talked about Elena's diary, not as a secret but as a lesson. She didn't leave her daughter money or a big house. She left her love, in instructions, in memories, in the quiet certainty that she'd always be there. "That's the kind of legacy I want us to build here. Not just profits but people. Not just products but purpose." When he finished, the room was silent for a heartbeat. Then someone clapped. Then another. Soon the whole room was on its feet. Not because he'd promised higher stock prices, but because he'd reminded them they mattered. Afterward, employees lined up to thank him. Not for the policies, but for seeing them, for remembering they had lives outside these walls. That night he came home tired but full. Maya was waiting on the porch with Paige at her feet. "How was work?" she asked. "Good," he said, sitting beside her. "I told them about your mom." Her eyes widened. "You did?" "Not your name, but her heart. Her love for you." Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned her head on his shoulder. "She'd like that." "I think so too." Later, as he tucked her in, she asked, "Do you think I'll forget her voice?" "No," he said, "because we'll keep reading her words. And you'll hear her in your own voice when you're kind or brave or singing about dancing potatoes." Maya smiled. "You're getting better at that song, by the way." "High praise," he said, ruffling her hair. As he turned off the light, she said, "Hey." "Yeah? Thanks for staying." He paused in the doorway. "Thanks for letting me." Back in his room, he opened his own journal, the one he'd started after meeting Maya. He wrote, "Today, I didn't change the world, but I helped one child feel safe, and that's enough." The next week, he visited the library again, this time with a check. He'd set up a foundation in Elena's name, the Quiet Love Fund. It would support single parents facing illness, provide books for kids in foster care, and train volunteers to read in schools. Linda cried when he told her. "You're honoring her," she said. "Not just her memory, her mission." He nodded. "She showed me that love isn't loud. It's in showing up. In the small things." At home, Maya had started writing in her own notebook, just like her mom. Sometimes she'd read him entries. "Today, Paige ate my homework. But it was math, so maybe it's okay." Or, "I dreamed Mom was reading to me in the library. She said I'm doing great." He never read her private pages unless she offered. But when she did, he listened like it was the most important story in the world. Because to her, it was, and to him she was, one evening. As they sat on the porch watching fireflies blink in the dusk, Maya said, "You know, I used to think nice people didn't exist." "Not really. Just in books." He looked at her. "What changed your mind?" She shrugged. "You showed up. Even when it was messy. Even when I was sad." He didn't say anything for a while. Just watch the fireflies dance, then he said, "Your mom taught me how to be that person. I just had to remember." Maya reached over and took his hand, and in that quiet moment under a sky full of stars, two broken pieces fit together. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to heal. Enough to hope. Enough to build something new, one small, loving act at a time. It had been a year since that rainy morning in the lobby. The city looked the same. Same tall buildings. Same busy streets, but everything felt different now. He walked slower. Noticed more. Smiled at strangers. Let Paige, the scruffy terrier, pull him toward puddles just because the dog wanted to splash. And today was special. He stood in the kitchen, trying to frost a lopsided chocolate cake without smearing it too much. Maya had insisted on baking it herself. Mom's recipe, she'd said proudly, and he'd only been allowed to help a little. Now, with strawberry frosting smeared on his cheek and flour dusting his sleeves, he stepped back to admire their work. "It's perfect," Maya said, coming up beside him. She wore a bright yellow dress and had 3 hair clips in, 2 matching, 1 crooked. "Just like Mom used to make," he smiled. "She'd be proud of you." Maya nodded, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. "Happy birthday," he blinked. "You got me something?" "Of course," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Open it." He carefully untied the ribbon and peeled back the paper. Inside was a notebook, simple blue cover, just like the one her mother had used. His breath caught, he opened it. The first page read, "Today, Mr. Daniel taught me to ride a bike without training wheels. He ran beside me the whole time, even though he was out of breath. He says Mom would be proud. I think she'd be proud of him, too." His eyes stung. He flipped to the next page. "We planted marigolds in the front yard. He says they're messy and bright, just like love. I think he's learning." And another. "He cried when we watched that movie about the dog. I didn't tell anyone. Some things are just for us." Maya watched him quietly. "I've been writing in it every week," she said. "Like Mom did. So you'll remember that you're doing good." He pulled her into a hug, cake forgotten. "Thank you," he whispered. "This is the best gift I've ever gotten." Later they walked to the park, the same one with the old oak tree and the tire swing. Paige bounded ahead, chasing a squirrel that had long since vanished. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling the grass in gold. Maya ran ahead, then turned back, arms wide. "Race you to the swings." He laughed, really laughed, and took off after her, not caring that he was wearing dress pants or that people might stare. He caught up just as she reached the swing set, breathless and grinning. They sat side by side, pushing off gently, the chains creaking in rhythm. For a while they didn't talk, just swung, watching clouds drift across the sky. Then Maya said, "Do you ever miss your old life?" He thought about it. The penthouse, the private car, the endless meetings where nothing real ever happened. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but not the way I thought I would. I miss the ease of it, the control, but I don't miss being alone." Maya nodded. "Mom used to say loneliness isn't about how many people are around you. It's about whether someone sees you." He looked at her. She was wise. "She was," Maya said. Then softly, "I see you." Those 3 words settled deep in his chest, warm and steady. Back at home they ate cake on the porch, Paige begging for crumbs at their feet. Maya chattered about school, about a new book she'd discovered, about how she wanted to be a librarian when she grew up, so I can help kids find the right stories. Like Mom did. He listened, really listened, the way he'd learned to. Later that evening, after Maya was in bed and the house was quiet except for Paige snoring on the rug, he sat at the kitchen table with both notebooks, the old one and the new one. He opened Elena's diary to the last page, the one he'd read so many times it felt like part of his own memory. "If you're reading this, you're part of her story now. Please love her like I do. Not perfectly, but fully." He closed it gently, then opened Maya's. On the last page she'd written, "Today is Mr. Daniel's birthday. I hope he knows he's my person now, and I'm his. We're a team, just like Mom wanted." He sat there for a long time, the words sinking in like rain into dry soil. The next morning, he drove to the library. Not for a meeting, not for a donation, but for a promise. Linda greeted him with a hug. "Ready?" He nodded. In the children's section, a small group had gathered. Kids from the neighborhood, a few parents, some library staff. A banner hung above the reading nook, the Quiet Love Literacy Program, opening day. He hadn't just funded it. He'd helped design it. Free books for every child who visited, reading buddies for kids in foster care, story hours led by volunteers trained to spot when a child needed more than just a book. Maybe a listening ear, maybe a warm meal, maybe someone to say, "I see you." Maya stood beside him, holding a stack of brand new notebooks, blue covers just like hers. "For the kids who want to write their own stories," she explained to a little boy who'd shyly approached. He watched her hand one over, watched the boy's face light up. After the ribbon cutting, a simple red string tied between two bookshelves, he sat in Elena's old armchair, the one Maya had shown him months ago, and read aloud from The Velveteen Rabbit. His voice was steadier now, warmer. When he finished, a little girl raised her hand. "Does the rabbit ever see the boy again?" He smiled. "In a way, yes, because love doesn't end. It just changes shape." Maya caught his eye from across the room and gave him a small, proud nod. That afternoon, as they walked home, Maya asked, "Do you think Mom knows?" "Knows what?" "That we're okay. That we found each other." He stopped walking, looked up at the sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. "I think she always knew," he said. "She wrote it in her diary, remember? If you're reading this, you're part of her story now. She trusted that someone would show up. And somehow, she knew it would be you who found me." Maya squeezed his hand. "Or me who found you. Maybe it was both. Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days. Nights when Maya woke up crying for her mom. Mornings when he fumbled the right words. Moments when the weight of it all felt too heavy. But they faced it together. He'd reconnected with his daughter, too. They didn't have all the answers, but they had coffee on Sundays and long talks that didn't end in silence. She'd even met Maya, and the two of them had bonded over baking disasters and old movies. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies, his daughter said, "You're different now." "I am," he said, "and it's because of her." He nodded toward Maya, who was drawing chalk pictures on the sidewalk with Paige's paw prints included. "She's lucky to have you." "No," he said softly. "I'm lucky to have her." Time passed as it always does. Seasons turned. Maya grew taller. Her handwriting in the blue notebook became neater, her thoughts deeper. She wrote about school plays, about losing another tooth, about how Paige finally stopped eating homework, mostly, and he kept showing up, not as a hero, not as a savior, just as a man who'd been given a second chance to love, and who refused to waste it. On the anniversary of Elena's passing, they visited her grave. Maya brought marigolds. He brought the diary. She read her favorite entry aloud, the one about the dancing potatoes, then placed the flowers gently on the stone. "She's still with us," Maya said, taking his hand. "Yes," he said. "In every page you read, every song you sing, every time you help someone who's scared." And as they walked back to the car, the sun warm on their backs, he realized something simple but true. He wasn't the same man who'd stood in that lobby a year ago, cold and closed off, rushing through a life that meant nothing. He was someone's safe place now, someone's team, someone's person. And that, more than any title, any fortune, any corner office, was everything. Back home, Maya ran inside to feed Paige, calling over her shoulder, "Don't forget, we're reading tonight." He smiled, stepping into the house, the door clicking shut behind him. Inside, the lights were on. The kettle was whistling. A notebook lay open on the kitchen table, waiting for tomorrow's story, and for the first time in his life, he knew, without doubt, without fear, that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Of course, since you originally requested a 5-part story, and all 5 parts have now been written, there is no official Part 6 in the planned outline. However, if you're asking for a God's bonus 6th part, as a heartfelt extension of the story, showing how the bond deepens and the legacy grows, here is a new, original Part 6, written just for you in the same style. It was a crisp October morning, the kind that smelled like fallen leaves and hot apple cider. Maya stood at the edge of the school stage, smoothing the front of her dress with slightly trembling hands. Today was the day she'd been preparing for all month. the citywide youth storytelling contest. She'd chosen her piece weeks ago, rewritten it 3 times, practiced in front of Paige, who wagged his tail politely, and even made the man she now called Dad listen while he cooked dinner, twice. He sat in the 3rd row, right in the center, wearing the slightly too casual blazer she'd picked out for him. He caught her eye and gave her a small nod, their quiet signal that said, "You've got this." She took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight. "Hi," she began, voice clear despite the butterflies. "My story is called The Diary That Changed Everything." She didn't mention names, didn't say CEO or foster care or cancer. Instead, she told it like a fable, about a girl who lost her compass, a stranger who didn't look like a hero, and a notebook filled not with magic spells, but with love spelled out in everyday acts. How to braid hair, what song to sing during thunderstorms, why strawberry frosting goes on chocolate cake. When she finished, the room was silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in applause. She spotted him standing, clapping harder than anyone, eyes bright in a way they hadn't been when she first met him. Afterward, as they walked to the car, she asked, "Was it okay?" He stopped, turned to her, and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, just like her mom used to, according to the diary. "It wasn't just okay," he said. "It was true, and that's the bravest kind of story." She smiled, then reached into her bag and pulled out a familiar blue notebook, now worn at the spine, pages slightly curled from years of use. "I added something last night," she said, handing it to him. He opened it to the newest entry. "Today I told our story on a stage. Not to get a prize, but so other kids know they're not alone. Dad says Mom's love started it, but ours keeps it going. I think that's what family really is, showing up even when it's hard. Especially then." He closed the book and pulled her into a hug. "You make her proud," he whispered. "Both of us." Later that week, a letter arrived at the house, handwritten on thick cream paper. It was from a woman who'd been in the audience. She wrote that her son, recently placed in foster care after losing his grandmother, had come home quiet and withdrawn, until he heard Maya's story. That night, for the first time in weeks, he'd asked for a bedtime story. The next day, he'd started writing in a notebook of his own. Enclosed was a photo. A boy, maybe 6, holding a red notebook, smiling faintly beside a woman who looked tired but hopeful. Maya taped the photo to the fridge, right next to her latest drawing of the 3 of them. Her dad, and Paige, sitting under the oak tree in the park. Life kept moving. Maya turned 12, started middle school, joined the library's teen advisory board. She and her dad still had their Saturday morning pancake tradition, though now she flipped the pancakes while he read the paper, aloud, in silly voices just to make her laugh. He still ran the company, but differently. The Quiet Love Fund had grown, now supporting literacy programs in 5 cities, offering emergency grants to caregivers facing illness, and training mentors who understood that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, "I'm here." One rainy afternoon, eerily like that first day, they sat on the porch with mugs of cocoa, watching Paige chase raindrops. Maya was quiet for a long time. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened," she finally asked, "if I hadn't given you the diary that day?" He thought about it. "I do," he said, "and I'm glad I don't have to live in that world." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Me too." A few months later, on a bright spring day, they returned to the lobby of the tall downtown building, the one where it all began. He'd arranged a small ceremony, the unveiling of a new reading corner in the building's atrium, funded by the foundation, filled with children's books and a comfortable chair labeled Elena's Nook. As guests mingled, Maya slipped away and stood near the spot where she'd once stood alone in a too-big raincoat. He found her there. "Remember this place?" he asked softly. She nodded. "I was so scared." "But you were brave," he said. "You trusted a stranger with your most precious thing." She looked up at him. "Because I saw something in you." Even then, he didn't argue. Maybe she had, or maybe love just finds its way. Through rain, through grief, through the simple act of asking, "Can you read this for me?" It's important. That evening, as they walked home, Maya stopped at the corner store and bought 2 chocolate bars, her favorite kind. She broke one in half and handed him a piece. "Happy anniversary," she said. He frowned. "Anniversary of what?" "The day we became us," she said, as if it were obvious. He smiled. Of course, 1 year ago today, the court had made it official. But to her, it wasn't about paperwork. It was about the moment they chose each other, and kept choosing every single day after. Back at home, Paige greeted them with his usual excited dance. Maya went to her room to finish homework, and he sat at the kitchen table with both notebooks, the old one and the new one, side by side. He opened Elena's diary to the last page one more time. Then he opened Maya's to the latest entry. Today we went back to the lobby. I stood where I stood a long time ago and I wasn't scared anymore. Dad says love is a verb. I think it's also a promise, and we're keeping it. He closed both books gently, placed them on the shelf beside his daughter's growing collection of library cards and school awards, and turned off the light. Upstairs, Maya called, "Don't forget. You're reading tonight." "I know," he called back, already heading up the stairs. "I brought the Velveteen Rabbit. Again?" she teased. "Always," he said. And as he settled into the chair by her bed, book in hand, he realized something simple and true. The diary hadn't just changed his life. It had given him a second chance to live it, with purpose, with presence, with love that didn't need to be loud to be lasting. Outside, the city hummed on, but in that quiet room, filled with the soft sound of turning pages and a child's steady breathing, everything that mattered was right there, and it always would be.